Hey, it's Eric from LED Grow Lights Depot. So you probably come here because you need help choosing an LED grow light, or you just want to know what LED grow light specs really matter. There are so many LEDs on the market these days, and choosing one can be tough. Oh, and just a quick note, hit the subscribe button below for more useful LED growing content and LED reviews. Now back to what I was saying. LED grow light companies market their products to get their products in front of you. And that's important to both parties. Of course, the LED grow light company, but also to you, because that light could be your next one. But great marketing doesn't make a great LED grow light. Performance does. So, how do you choose the best LED grow light for your grow? Instead of telling you which LED grow light to buy, I'm going to offer you my knowledge and insight on how to choose the best LED grow light for your specific application. There are several factors to consider, and I narrowed this down into 6 different considerations. The topics that I'll be covering in this video include light intensity, spectrum, wattage draw, coverage area, warranty, price. Light intensity. Light intensity is one of the top factors when choosing an LED grow light. You want the right amount of light for the particular stages of growth that your plants go through, and for the size of your grow space. It is possible to have too much light in your space, but most growers are concerned with having not enough light. Now, when I mention light intensity, I'm not talking about how intense that light looks to the human eye, I'm talking about how intense that looks to plants. So, the quantity of photons that plants can use for growth and flowering. Quality of photons is also important, and I'll be touching on that soon. So how do you know which fixture will cover the area that you need it to cover with the correct amount of light intensity? Here's how. Use the recommended footprint from the manufacturer. This is the quickest and easiest way to know if the light will suit your grow space. Although this doesn't really tell you how much light is emitted from the fixture. So one manufacturer may tell you that their light covers a 4 foot by 4 foot area, while another manufacturer with a similar light of similar light intensity will say that it covers about a 4.5 foot by 4.5 foot area. That's kind of a significant difference. So sometimes these coverage areas can be a little subjective. Therefore, consider the ppf reading. ppf is the total light output of the lamp in micromoles per second. ppf stands for photosynthetic photon flux. This is measured in an integrating sphere, a very expensive piece of equipment. ppf is important because it's a measure of how powerful the light is. In general, if the number is above 1,000 micromoles per second or so, it'll cover a 4 foot by 4 foot area. About 1,500 micromoles per second is the top range for a light that covers a 4 by 4 area. ppf to me is kind of like proof that the fixture emits what the manufacturer is telling us. But light intensity is not the complete story. It doesn't tell you how that light is distributed across the entire area. It's like saying the sun emits a million gazillion photons of light per second. But how much light hits the surface of the earth, and how is it distributed across the surface as well? That's what really matters. So instead of just using the manufacturer's recommended footprint and ppf reading, you should also consider the manufacturer's PAR chart. A PAR chart, or photosynthetic active radiation chart, is a map of the ppfd readings, or light intensity readings in beginner speak, over the recommended footprint. ppfd stands for photosynthetic photon flux density. A PAR map shows how intense the light is over a given area and how that light is distributed across that area. Every single light source is most intense in the middle, less intense on the edges, and even less intense on the corners. Some LED grow lights emit their light from a small surface area. Their PAR charts will be less uniform, with high intensity in the middle and less intensity on the edges and corners. Generally, these fixtures are placed higher above the canopy. Other fixtures will have several lower power diodes across the area of the fixture. Their PAR charts will be more uniform, and this is generally ideal for most people. The numbers will still be highest in the center, but there won't be such a disparity between the numbers in the center and the numbers on the edges and corners. The average ppfd is important because this tells you the average light intensity over a given area. The only downside is that this number doesn't indicate uniformity. So uniformity can be interpolated by looking at the PAR map and seeing how those numbers are distributed across that footprint. So what are the recommended ppfd readings for an 18-hour veg period and a 12-hour flowering period? Well, for veg, generally about a couple hundred to 600 ppfd or more is recommended, while the flowering stage is recommended for 600 ppfd to 1000 ppfd or more if using CO2. These numbers vary widely because it really depends on how hard you want to push your plants. Now, some LED grow lights are dimmable, which allows you to dial down that light intensity for veg or seedlings, which will help you save electricity. Spectrum. Spectrum is of second importance when choosing an LED grow light. You want to ensure that you pick the correct spectrum depending on which stage of growth your plants are going through. Some of you might only be vegging, others might only be flowering, but most of you will be completing a full cycle grow from seedling to harvest. There are two different types of spectrums on the market, targeted or broad. A targeted spectrum uses specific wavelengths of diodes to match the photosynthetic peaks of chlorophyll absorption. Some brands will target UVA, green, and IR. These monodiodes, or narrowband wavelengths as they're known as, were the first types of LEDs to hit the market, and many brands still use this approach. The theory is that these wavelengths provide all the necessary light to the plants, nothing more, nothing less. It's considered photosynthetically efficient. The other type of spectrum is a full white light spectrum. This approach uses COBs or mid-power LEDs, sometimes enhanced with other diodes to round out the spectrum. The idea here is that the white diodes provide all the necessary wavelengths to the plant. This type of spectrum has more green light in it, contributed by the white diode, so the spectrum is more natural looking. And the plants appear more normal looking because of this, so no pinkish purple spectrum that the targeted wavelength approach provides. Now, it's easy to say that the industry is moving towards a white light approach, and here's a few reasons why. 1. White diodes are very efficient. 2. Plants look more natural underneath the white light, so they're easier to see and easier to diagnose pests or diseases. 3. The spectrum of a white light contains more green and has higher ppfd readings because of this. Medical plants are light hungry and actually absorb a lot of green light, contrary to what most people think. When referring to spectrum, there's several different types of fixtures on the market. Targeted spectrums and white light fixtures that are for veg only, targeted spectrums and white light fixtures that are for flower only, and targeted spectrums and white light fixtures that are for full cycle only. Now, these are probably the most common. As I mentioned earlier, a fixture spectrum may be tunable or fixed. Now, fixtures that offer a tunable spectrum can be tuned by either veg and bloom switches or by dimming down the respective veg or bloom channels. Fixed spectrums can't be changed. That's why they're called fixed. In general, more blue is better for veg since it keeps the distance between the inner nodes shorter. This leads to squattier plants with less stretch. Increased red is desired during the flowering stage since this can lead to higher yields. Having some red in the spectrum during veg is essential for healthy growth, and having some blue in the spectrum for flower helps increase quality. Light intensity and the ratio of red to blue light determines yield. More blue, say a 4000K spectrum or a 1:1 ratio of blue to red, might lead to slightly smaller yields but better quality, while less blue, say a 3000 Kelvin spectrum or a 1:2 ratio of blue to red, will result in higher yields but of slightly less quality. So what's the best spectrum for your grow? Well, I can't easily answer this because the best spectrum depends on what stage of growth your plants are in and what you want to get out of your plants. Wattage draw. Wattage draw has been used by years for growers to determine how powerful a light is. In general, a 400 watt HPS would flower about a 2x2, a 600 watt HPS would flower about a 3x3, and a 1000 watt HPS would flower about a 4x4. Yet, wattage doesn't exactly translate to light intensity, as you'll see. The more efficient a fixture is, the more light it will exude per watt. For instance, a light that is 2.5 micromoles per joule and draws 500 watts will have a ppf of 1250. But a light that has an efficacy of 2.0 and draws 600 watts, so 100 watts less as our previous example, will have a ppf of only 1140 micromoles per second. So in this example, more watts are being used in the second case, but the light output is less. Point being, you can't use wattage alone to determine how powerful or how intense an LED grow light is. Wattage draw will only give you a general idea of how powerful an LED grow light is, so take it with a grain of salt. In 2018, we're seeing fixtures that only draw 480 watts and will fully cover a 4x4 area. However, other companies might use LED grow lights that draw 800 watts to cover slightly more than a 4x4 area. So if you're concerned about energy draw, choose a lower powered fixture or more efficient LED grow light. But if you don't care about energy consumption and just want the best light for your money, then choose a light based off of other performance specs. Wattage draw, efficacy, and light output might be more important to commercial growers, since energy consumption really starts to add up and these growers want the most light intensity for the least amount of wattage. It makes sense. Also, be aware of fixtures that claim that they're 1000 watts or 600 watts, for example. This usually refers to diode wattage and not the actual power draw of the fixture. So that proclaimed 1000 watt LED grow light that you found on eBay or Amazon may actually only draw 250 watts. And as diode efficiency increases over the coming years, fixture wattage will decrease and light output per watt will increase. Many of you want to know how many watts you need per square foot for flowering. This number varies, but if I was to name a number, I would say around 32 watts per square foot. Now sometimes less, say down to 30 watts per square foot, but sometimes more, say up to 40 watts per square foot. It just really depends on the fixture. There's not a single answer because everyone flowers at different intensities with fixtures of different efficacies. Now this really isn't related to wattage, but I want to cover it here anyways. Make sure that the light that you're using is rated for your specific voltage application. So most of us have 120 watt voltage in our homes, but some may use 240 volts. Now commercial grows may use 240 volts or higher. And most LED grow lights these days have a flexible driver of say 110 volts to 277 volts, so most LED grow lights will be okay for most growers. So the big takeaway here with wattage is to use wattage as a guide and really pay attention to the PPFD readings, PAR map, uniformity, and total light output of the lamp. Coverage area. Knowing the dimensions of your grow space is important because you want a light that fully covers this area. Now, common size grow areas for hobbyists include 4x4s, 3x3s, 2x2s, but also sets of these dimensions. For example, 4x8, 8x8, 3x6, 2x4, etc. Some growers grow in a 5x5 area, while commercial growers might grow in several hundred or several thousand square foot areas. Most large, powerful LED grow lights will cover about up to a 4x4 area, with some of the biggest ones covering a 5x5, and there's very few out there that will cover more than a 5x5. And this is because it's nearly impossible for a fixture to fully cover those edges and corners at good intensity. So when you start to get into these larger areas, it's better to use several smaller fixtures to cover this space because it allows for a more even footprint. For example, if you're growing in an 8x8 area, it's best to use 4 lights that cover a 4x4 area, so 4x4, 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 and 4x4 for a total of 8x8. So you'd want to do this instead of finding the most powerful LED grow light to cover that whole 8x8 area, because that intensity is going to be really intense in the middle and not so much on the edges and corners. In smaller areas, such as a 2x4 area, you can try to find a light that covers the 2x4 area as advertised, or you can use 2 lights that cover a 2x2 area. And it's not really ideal to use a light that covers a 3x3 in a 2x4 space because that light's not fully gonna cover it with the most even intensity. However, people do it, it works, but it's not the best use of the light or your space. Some fixtures have lenses that are installed over the diodes. Lenses help focus down the light onto the plants. Usually these grow lights are placed high above the plants, say at 18 inches or so, to ensure that the plants are not exposed to too much light. So what do lenses do? Well, lenses allow the light to stay in a concentrated area. Think of a defined circle or a defined square or rectangle. Other LED grow lights don't use lenses, so think of a circle or square or rectangle with fuzzy edges, not defined edges. Now, depending on the design of the light, these fixtures can be placed higher above the plants, just like the lights with lenses, but typically they're placed closer to the plants, sometimes as close as 6 inches from the top of the canopy. So I'm not going to comment here on which style, whether it's lenses or no lenses, are better for your grow, because it really depends on your application or preference. Different manufacturers have different opinions on lenses, which affects the way that their lights are used. So in general, lenses determine how close that light can get to the top of the plants and how that light is concentrated down on the plants. My best recommendation is to refer to the PAR map to see how that light is spread out across the footprint. Also, use these PAR maps to determine what the manufacturer means when they say their light covers a 2x2 or a 4x4 area, for example. A manufacturer's words are meaningless unless they have the data to prove it. Questions to keep in mind when looking at a PAR map include: how intense is the light at a given distance? How uniform is the light across the footprint? Are these numbers high, say above 1000 ppfd, or low, say around 300 ppfd? And will these intensities be sufficient for my stage of growing? Warranties. In a perfect world where everything works, we wouldn't need warranties, right? But we live in an imperfect world, so we need warranties. 99% of the time, LED grow lights have no problem, but sometimes they can have issues. For example, a driver can fail, LEDs can go out, or a fan will break. So knowing that the manufacturer will take care of these issues for you is very reassuring. LED grow light warranties can range from 1 year to 7 years, with about 3 years or 5 years being the most common. You might consider reading the warranty on the manufacturer's website if you have any concerns or questions about a manufacturer's warranty. Most manufacturers will send a replacement part or sometimes an entire new LED grow light if there's an issue within the warranty period. When a warranty expires, typically you're responsible for the repairs or parts. Price. The cost of an LED grow light is also a consideration for most people. This is because LED grow lights can be quite expensive. However, the cost of LED grow lighting is going down and efficiency and performance are going up. A grow light can range from below $100 to above $2,000. The size, light output, and quality of parts tends to drive this discrepancy. Yes, LEDs are more expensive than a traditional HID setup, but the LEDs themselves will last 50 to 100,000 hours. And assuming that they're driven by high quality drivers, and if they have a fan, the fans are high quality, your LED grow light should last you 10 years or more. For some growers, cost isn't an issue because they just want the best light for the grow. Therefore, performance is the top consideration for these growers. But many of us are working with a budget, so finding the right LED grow light within your budget can be a challenge because there's so many lights on the market. So what are the top considerations when working with a budget? I would say light intensity, spectrum, and quality of parts are your top concerns. So the first consideration is light intensity. You want to get the most amount of light for your money so you can ensure the plants are getting the correct amount of light to produce a good yield. And you want the fixture to cover the most amount of area in your grow space so you can ensure the entire plant is being doused in beautiful rays of light. Secondly, you want to ensure that the fixture has a correct spectrum for your stage of growing, whether that's for veg, bloom, or a full cycle grow. Finally, you should ensure that the parts are of decent quality. You can do this by ensuring that the LED light is from a trusted manufacturer, by reading reviews of the light, getting a friend's recommendation, consulting with an unbiased source, or choosing a light that has components from trusted companies such as Cree, Samsung, Osram, or Meanwell, for example. Overall, you want the light to perform just like those people with a less strict budget want. Again, performance is what it comes down to, and yield, quality, and energy savings is how you measure performance. If the light performs or exceeds your expectations, it's a winner. And I'll leave you with that. I hope there are some good takeaways here. So in this video, I didn't tell you which light to buy, but instead I educated you on kind of looking around the marketing a little bit and looking at the true factors that make a good LED grow light. Do you have any additional considerations that you'd like to add in the comment section below? Let us know. And if you have any questions or need help selecting the best light for your grow, feel free to call us or email us at ledgrowlightsdepot.com and hit the subscribe button for more useful content on LED grow lights and more LED grow light reviews. Give this video a like if you found it useful. See you guys. We done?